Hey there, Professor Fields here. We are in AJ 111 Criminal Investigations, Module 5.2, Crime Scene Management. Now, your initial response to the crime scene can set the stage for the rest of the investigation, so here are some things to consider during your initial response. Number one, officer safety. When you're approaching a crime scene, be alert for anything that's going on at the crime scene. Is this a crime in progress? Are the suspects still there? Are the victims hurt? Anything like that. Scan for environmental threats. Look for down power lines, chemical hazards, etc. I have a teacher that teaches EMT, and he always says, "Take 5 to survive." So take that time to look around and see what could be a hazard to you. Make sure it's safe to enter that crime scene before you go in any further. You don't want to become part of the problem. Second priority is to protect life. So summon the medical attention for necessary persons that are injured. Provide medical care to your level of training. And if possible, guide the medical personnel through the crime scene, but don't delay any medical care to do that. Make sure that the people get treated. You don't want to ever stop and hold back medical personnel because you're trying to collect evidence. If there's no priority to enter the crime scene, determining the legality of entering it. So if there's none of those exigent circumstances we discussed in Chapter 4, the hot pursuits, the destruction of evidence, stuff like that, then step back for a minute and consider getting a search warrant or getting consent to enter. If it's a business or something, you can get the consent from the business owner. If you remember to our O.J. Simpson case study, one of the detectives hopped the fence. He said there was exigent circumstances, but he went beyond the initial exigent circumstances in searching the crime scene. You are allowed to secure that crime scene and do a protective sweep for suspects and or victims, and then secure the crime scene in anticipation of a warrant. But if you have the time to do it and there's no exigent circumstances, get that warrant. Protect the crime scene. Get out there and put the crime scene tape up. Remember to start big. It's easier to contract the crime scene. In other words, get it really big, and it's easier to reduce it down to smaller if needed, but it's almost impossible to expand it once you've got it set small. Station some personnel at strategic points so that people can't get in, streets, intersections, stuff like that. Start a roster of persons coming and going through the scene. Keep the looky-loos out. A lot of times you'll have officers that are curious that'll come on by. They want to see what's going on inside the crime scene. Those are the ones that destroy your evidence, that could mess up your case. Keep those people out. And the media can be excluded from a crime scene. A lot of people don't know that, but the media can be excluded from a crime scene. But consider having a media staging area. That's the best way to do that. I'll discuss that in the next slide here. Summon your resources, detective unit when necessary, supervisory personnel. It's always better to have somebody there to make the decisions, command decisions. CSI unit if your agency has one. Public information officers. I tell you, that's almost the first call out I make is the PIO, because they're going to take the media off your hands for you and be able to give the statements so you don't have to give the statements. If you don't have a public information officer on scene, who does the media go for statements? They go to the fire department. They go to the Billy Bob sitting on the corner with his beer. So make sure you have the public information officer there. Law enforcement chaplains can save your butt too. Law enforcement chaplains are trained to help out people that are injured, victims, relatives of those that are injured or killed at your crime scenes. Call out public works if needed. They can put barricades up, sign units, stuff like that. Some agencies have a traffic control unit, civilians that'll come out and direct traffic for you. If there's hazardous materials on scene, radioactive stuff, drug lab, stuff like that, call that hazmat unit out. Preliminary investigation. Start your preliminary investigation. Identify the suspects, witnesses, and other stakeholders and separate them. Business owners, stuff like that. Separate them so that we don't get a chance to compare their statements. Note, make a quick sketch of location of physical evidence that's important to the crime scene, and obtain the names of EMS personnel that are going to be leaving the crime scene. They're not going to stick around for the detectives to talk to them. They have to get back on duty, so get their names, all their horsepower. That way you can give that to the detective. It's going to be important for them when they're doing their investigation. On larger investigations, consider setting up a command post. When you're get into law enforcement, you'll get trained on how to set up the incident command system. But a command post is always a good idea at the larger crime scenes. Consider last fall we had the shooting in San Bernardino where several people were killed. Crime scenes like that, a command post is essential. You can't run that kind of a large of a crime scene without it. All right, that's it. That's it for this segment. We'll get on to the next segment. Thanks.